watching CNN-IBN.
Brought to you by Siemens. Siemens answers the toughest questions. 2 million pixel Sony Bravia full high-definition LCD TV. And Aditya Birla Group, taking India to the world.
Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. Is the BJP guilty of inflaming separatism in the valley because it's put its own interests before those of the country? That's the key issue I shall explore today with the General Secretary of the party, Arun Jaitley. Mr. Jaitley, let's start with the BJP's role in Jammu. How do you justify the fact that a party that preaches nationalism is deliberately pursuing a policy that's inflaming separatism in the Kashmir Valley?
Well, I think you are being too naive when you ask this question. Do you seriously think that the separatists in the valley have relaunched this separatist movement merely because of the land issue?
Absolutely.
They were absolutely not.
They've been given the opportunity because of the land issue.
Absolutely not, and let's not be naive. We've been naive for the last 60 years, those who subscribe to that thought, and I won't be naive. And let me answer it. First, the separatists lied to the whole country, to the whole world, saying that Hindu colonization would come up in the valley. There was nobody in the valley, not even the state government or the central government, which countered that propaganda. The separatists lied to the whole world, saying there is an economic blockade. Nobody was willing to counter that. We were the ones who are countering it.
I'm afraid.
And today, we are the ones who are saying that the land transfer is pursuant to a law enacted by the state legislature, pursuant to a direction of the High Court. Why should it not be implemented?
All right, I'll let you have your say in full without interrupting you. Now let me reply. First of all, it wasn't the separatists alone who reacted to the land transfer. The PDP and the National Conference Party, who are not separatist parties, were just as vehement about it.
That's the tragedy.
Well, that's a fact. Secondly,
that's a tragic fact.
It's a fact, though. The second point is that when it comes to the blockade, there was a blockade. Figures released by the Jammu and Kashmir Horticultural Department, a part of the official government, prove that between the 1st of August and the 17th of August this year, only 890 trucks bearing fruit came from Srinagar to the Banihal Pass, whereas last year during the same dates, the figure was 2,148. The fall is nearly 60%.
Let's be very clear. If you have a Bandh in Jammu and a curfew in Jammu for 50 days, if you have a curfew in the valley for 30 days plus, business is bound to go down.
It didn't.
I have gone to the valley myself. We asked the army, the district administration, as to what is the position. They gave us daily figures. This was not the apple season, this was the Babu Gosha season. And they said, there is nothing lying on record in the stocks. We have today 90 trucks waiting at the sabzi mandis, and there is nothing to be loaded on it. It was a false propaganda. Any fall on traffic could be because of the Bandh and the curfews. The fall in traffic was not because of any economic blockade.
The fall in the traffic was because your ministers of the Punjab government, Manoranjan Kalia and Mohan Lal, were actively creating a blockage at Madhavpur. Both of them let me finish. Both of them camped at Pathankot. They implemented a blockade, and more importantly, they personally obstructed trucks from Jammu and Kashmir, and you can't deny that.
This is absolutely incorrect.
They haven't denied it. How can you?
I am denying it for the reason there were protests in Jammu, there were protests in Punjab, which led to the disruption of traffic. The BJP leadership, the Akali Dal leadership in Punjab, personally intervened and said, protest on any road, but not on the highway, because the highway may lead to a stoppage of traffic.
Forgive me, Mr.
Any
Jaitley.
stoppage of traffic on a traffic because of a protest
Mr.
is not a
Jaitley,
blockade.
you're wrong. Your own MLA Dinesh Kumar Babu said this. He boasted about it. He said, I led the agitation. We will not allow J&K trucks to ply in Punjab. At
See, one day there was a problem because of a demonstration. They were told to keep their demonstrations outside the national highway.
The fact of the matter is that the drug controller in Jammu and Kashmir had to appeal for the airlifting of drugs. He did it officially. The Divisional Commissioner Kashmir wrote to the All India Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association to arrange supplies from other cities.
Again, half-truth. Again, half-truth.
Complete truth.
Half-truth, because the drug controller and the divisional commissioner, when they appeared before the all-party committee, said the distributors of these medicines were in Jammu. Because there was curfew and Bandh in Jammu, they could not get it, and therefore the manufacturers must directly supply it to the valley.
No.
Now, it was not because of any blockade.
No, I'm afraid that's the half-truth.
Well, I heard the divisional commissioner myself You didn't hear him.
No.
And therefore, the divisional commissioner told the all-party delegation this was obstructed because of the Bandh and the curfew in Jammu. So we asked the manufacturers, and we've never had a short supply.
The reason it's a half-truth is because you haven't answered the question, why was that an obstruction taking place? And the reason is this: drivers were scared to cross, as a result of which
Yes, that's true.
JK02 traffic doesn't go north and JK01 doesn't come south. At Ramban, every traffic stops, which is why there is a blockade, which is why people's livelihoods
Again, a
are
partial
suffering.
tainted presentation of fact. Drivers on both sides were scared. Drivers on both sides were scared. And that is why drivers need security. And we were told that security was being provided to drivers.
And that is why, in fact, as a result, the valley felt cut off. That is why
the valley was never cut off.
Separatism was inflamed.
Let's be very clear. I visited the valley. Not a single packet of fruit was lying in the valley which had to be transported out. The divisional commissioner said they have abundance of medicines which they have directly brought to the valley.
Forgive me, Mubin Shah, the president of the Kashmir Chamber of Commerce, says that if the fruit industry in Kashmir is worth 2,500 crore, it suffered a loss this year of 1,000 crore. That is almost 40%.
Well, Mubin Shah is a part of the Hurriyat. He refused to meet the all-party delegation. He was leading those trucks which were going to Muzaffarabad. He was preventing the trucks from being loaded at the sabzi mandis which the divisional commissioner had put up. 90 trucks had been put up, and he was preventing that to be done up. Let us not take his statement to be the gospel.
All right,
truth.
let's look then at a core fact that you seem to have ignored. Let's go away from the tutu meme of facts and let's come to the reality. You know that Kashmir is a different state to any other in India. It's disputed between India and Pakistan. It's an unresolved matter if you take the Lahore Declaration, which your government signed. In those circumstances, let me finish, in those circumstances, to persist with the blockade when it had led to calls for the opening up of the Muzaffarabad border was to pour oil on fire. You did that. You inflamed sentiments that were latent. You created a secessionist movement.
Anybody who says that there was an economic blockade is trying to give weight to the falsehood spread by the separatists that there was a blockade. The army's position is no blockade. The government of India's position is no blockade. The Sangharsh Samiti told us there was never a blockade. There won't be a blockade.
Hospitals are complaining of shortage of medicine.
No, we were told.
We were told
by the divisional.
Others are complaining
we
of
were told by
shortage
the
of meat.
divisional commissioner that there is a sufficiency of medicines as far as hospitals are concerned. The governor maintained that. Let's not go by the Hurriyat propaganda.
I'm not going by the Hurriyat propaganda. I'm going by the Indian Express, the Times of India, the Hindustan Times. Almost every journalist was his name.
I am going by what the district administration there has told us, what the hospital administration has told us, what the army administration there has told us. And let me tell you, Kashmir is not going to be, I do not accept this proposition of Kashmir being disputed. It may be Pakistan's unfinished agenda after independence.
The Lahore Declaration signed by your government calls it an outstanding issue. That clearly means it's unresolved. Your own government said so.
The outstanding issue only is, and I reiterate it, that Pakistan must accept that Kashmir is an integral part of India, and India will not under any circumstances barter away an inch of its territory.
That may be your interpretation, but the fact of the matter is that the world recognizes Kashmir as a disputed situation. The Indian government has on many occasions accepted that it has to require a final settlement.
I am afraid on account of the erroneous policies of the government of India in the late 40s and the early 50s, there was some internationalizing of the issue. The last few years, the world is not willing to internationalize this issue. And let me tell you,
but bilaterally, India and Pakistan have accepted it has to be sorted out. Your government has accepted it.
After 9/11 particularly, the world is not going to listen to such separatist organizations which have used violence in order as an instrument of separatism.
Let me come to the core issue that you don't want to focus upon. It is this, that for the last 10 years, increasingly, the separatist tendency was dying down. This year, you had record turnout of tourists. And yet, what has the BJP implemented blockade in Jammu done? You've inflamed separatist tendency to the point, let me finish, to the point at which the separatists today are thanking you. Saeed Ali Shah Gilani, the most hardline Islamist of the lot, has publicly said, I thank the BJP for reviving a movement that was flagging.
Well, I don't think we need that compliment or thanks from him. Let me make it very clear. We are only supporting the demand of the Amarnath Sangharsh Samiti in Jammu, and the demand precisely is this, that you have lakhs of tourists going. The Shrine Board has a duty under law to maintain the pilgrim facilities. The Shrine Board has been legitimately transferred some land to be used during the yatra. And to this, if the separatist protests and the government of India comes to that pressure, if the government of India starts coming to pressure of separatists, then governance in India really will not have legitimacy.
It's not the fact that you're supporting the Amarnath demand that I question, it's the manner and the implication and the consequence of the way you're doing it. You have cut off the valley. Let me finish this time. You have cut off the valley. You have generated a feeling amongst the people of Kashmir that they do not belong. As a result, you have inspired them a desire for Azadi 1 or secession 2. Movements that were latent have now revived. Suddenly, the whole valley, with one voice, is shouting, Jiye, Jiye, Pakistan. Do you know what they're saying about India? They're saying, Bharat, teri maut aayi. And your blockade is solely responsible for this.
Well, I reject this suggestion that you are making in toto. What you are suggesting that there is a blockade only aids the kind of false propaganda which is done by the separatists. Not only I reject it, this is supported by what the journalists who have been flown by the government of India in the army helicopters, along the helicopter.
What about the journalists who are there, who know Kashmir, who live there, who write for the papers?
Well, let me tell you, people who have seen it, cameras don't lie, men do. And therefore, I have seen it on cameras that there was no blockade. You've seen it on cameras.
Cameras have shown hundreds of thousands of Kashmiris for the first time waving Pakistani flags in their
cameras,
lakhs, demanding Azadi. Suddenly, administration has collapsed.
Well, the cameras have also shown 4 lakh people holding the national flag in Jammu, courting arrest peacefully for their demand that give us this land which is meant for pilgrim facilities.
But could you not have demanded it without a blockade? Could you not have pursued it without a blockade?
The blockade is a lie perpetuated by the ISI, supported by the Hurriyat, and therefore I would only urge responsible Indian journalists not to give any credibility to such a blockade.
Except for the fact that it's widely believed by everyone in Srinagar and in the valley. And let me quote
this is rebutted by the army, this is rebutted by the district administration, this is rebutted by the state government, the government of India and the BJP. You have all these words against your words.
Except for the fact that the information secretary of the Lashkar-e-Toiba is also amongst those who's thanking your party. Let me quote to you what he says. Let me quote you.
Hurriyat and Lashkar-e-Toiba's word may carry weight with you. They don't carry weight with you.
Unfortunately, they carry weight with the people of the valley. That's what.
Well, that's the tragedy, and it should not carry weight with the people of valley. That's what we have to jointly decide.
You're creating a situation where increasingly it does. You're not undermining the influence. You're adding to it.
We are only creating a situation where people in the valley should not raise a demand which is separatist in character, and the government of India should not cow down to a demand which is separatist in character.
But look at the way that you've inflamed separatist sentiment. This is what the information secretary of the LET says. He says the BJP suits us. Lashkar-e-Toiba is getting a good response because of the BJP sentiments. And then he says, we pray to God they come to power again. Then we will emerge even stronger.
Well, I have nothing to say.
You are doing what Pakistan failed to do in 6 years. You've done it in 6 weeks.
We've been in power at 6 years in the center. We initiated a peace process. We moved Kashmir towards the direction of
peace. And now you're pushing it all the way to Pakistan.
We are not doing that. All we are doing it is, if separatists raise a demand, don't allow the aspirations of the nationalists to be cowed down.
All right, let's take a break at that point. Let's come back and talk about one other way in which, without thinking, and simply because you're trying to get the best interest for your party, you're once again pushing Jammu into a divide with the valley. That's in a moment's time after the break.
I wanted to spend my life traveling, but a man has to work. I've worked with the Aditya Birla Group in the US, in China, and Australia. It was great. And today, I'm headed where the whole world wants to be. India. Tomorrow, who knows? They say travel broadens the mind. It also broadened my career. The Aditya Birla Group. A world of opportunities.
No financial supplements on room rent and treatment. Enjoy the advantage of lifelong renewal. Cashless treatment across India. Health insurance starting at just ₹3 per day from the company that knows healthcare best. Apollo TKV Health Insurance. Let's stay healthy.
सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है. So naturally, I changed to Anchor.
Who treasures invaluable raindrops in his heart? Who toils hard day and night to create crops? Whose pains for the environment remain unseen? Who spends his life turning grey to green? A celebration of those working for a clean environment. HSBC, the world's local bank, presents Green Heroes at these times only on CNN-IBN.
Ready? Ready.
Next is to bring alive your Olympic spirit with a Samsung TouchWiz phone. Samsung Mobile, the official mobile phone of the Beijing 2008 Olympic Games.
पेट्रोल प्राइसेस कम होने की नो गारंटी, पर हेयर फॉल रोकने की है गारंटी। लीजिए पैराशूट थेरेपी का हेयरोमीटर चैलेंज और पाइए इस गारंटी का प्रूफ सिर्फ 45 दिनों में। पैराशूट थेरेपी है गारंटी।
We are the leading international insurance organization and a financial services powerhouse. But to us, there is nothing more precious than your rupee. AIG, we appreciate the value of your money. This is Network 18, and you are watching CNN-IBN.
Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an interview with BJP General Secretary Arun Jaitley. Mr. Jaitley, in part one we talked about how the BJP was deliberately inflaming separatist sentiment. You disputed it. I insisted that was how the Valley saw it. What's perhaps even more inexplicable is that in those very circumstances now, your former party president Venkaiah Naidu is claiming that Jammu is underrepresented and unfairly treated by the political system, that it hasn't got an adequate representation in the state assembly. Is this the right time at which to raise such emotional, political, sensitive issues?
Well, let's first know the facts. Today, you have in Jammu more number of voters numerically, and yet they are underrepresented in the assembly. They have lesser jobs as far as state government is concerned. They have lesser admissions as far as colleges are concerned. Now, the entire movement in Jammu, maybe because of land at the moment, but there's a huge sense of discrimination the people have. The government must address that sense of discrimination at certain stages.
Once again, I allowed you to present the facts as you see them, and I'm sorry, but you've got the facts wrong. The truth is that if you go by the registered voters, no doubt Jammu has more registered voters than the Valley, but you know and I know that because of the militancy and because of the violence, there's huge under-registration in the Valley. So instead, go by the total population. That's how constituencies are divided as well. And if you look at that,
well, I find that ridiculous what you say.
Let me finish.
If you
go by the total population, you'll discover that there are 46 MLAs in Kashmir, 37 in Jammu, but for every MLA, there is 119,000 people in both regions, which means that the division is done perfectly in accordance with the population. It's not unfair, it's totally justified.
Now you've made a point. This appeared in a story in the Hindu. That's where you got the data from. And you must now know the true facts. 1951, there was no census in J&K. 1961, Kashmir had 3 lakh people more than Jammu. 71, it had 3 lakh people more. 81, again, it had 4 lakh people more. 91, there was no census. So 4 lakh more in 81. Between 81 and 2001, you had Kashmiri Pandits being pushed out. You had the Sikhs being pushed out. You have the wealthier Muslims also being pushed out because they found it unsafe. So the population of Jammu would have increased. Instead, the 2001 census, a rigged census, I reiterate, showed 11 lakhs more in the valley, which should have come down. So the election commission said, we'll go door to door and conduct a registration of voters. In militancy, you can register people in terms of population, you can also register voters, and suddenly you find Jammu has more voters. Today you have an incongruous situation where Valley has more registered people through that census of 2001, but effectively 2.5 lakh less voters.
It's very interesting that today you're raising disputes about the credibility of the 2001 census, which you call a rigged census. You happen to be the government in power at the time when the census was declared. Why did you not express these doubts earlier? Why are you conveniently raising them today?
I am sorry, this is... When the facts belie your contention and claim, you are now coming to a question, why didn't you raise it?
It's not the facts, it's your interpretation. There's a different thing.
I am
it's
sorry.
not facts, it's
I
interpretation.
have given you the figures from 1961 to 2001.
Population can change in 20 years.
Well, population of Doda, Kishtwar and Bhadrua, which were the Muslim majority districts of Jammu, did not change, but population of Valley changed.
If the population of New York can jump because of 12 hours and one night of power failure, and you know that that's happened, surely in 20 years the population can change as well.
Surely you've been reading the newspapers in the last 20 years, people migrated out of the valley, did not migrate into the valley.
Why?
So population should have come down. It couldn't have increased 11 lakhs.
But if it's a rigged census, why did you not raise this concern when you were in power?
Yes,
it happened in your time.
I am sorry, this has been raised at every stage. The Jammu people have raised it. I was a part of one of the working groups in the Prime Minister's roundtable. I have raised it in writing there.
Is this, however, leave the facts aside, because there's going to be a difference of interpretation, there's going to be a difference of motivation.
There is no scope for interpretation.
And you know what Churchill said about statistics. They come after lies and damned lies.
Well, the number of voters in Jammu is 2.5 lakhs more. But how does the Valley have more people?
But why at the most sensitive time, when the Valley is inflamed, when the divide between Jammu and Kashmir is at its worst, why raise it now?
Well, I think your heart bleeds not for Jammu, only for the Valley. You must also realize...
My heart bleeds for India.
Your heart must bleed for India.
Yours doesn't. Yours only bleeds for the BJP.
Your vision and policies have been responsible for what has happened in Kashmir. As far as Jammu is concerned, it is crying of discrimination. This is a strong ground of discrimination, and you want to shut a popular debate out on this issue.
It's not that it's a popular debate, it's that the BJP is deliberately exploiting a situation to gain electoral benefit. You are
I am afraid if statistics suit Jammu, it hurts some people.
Can I finish the question? You're so blinded by your belief that by jumping onto the Jammu bandwagon, you can improve your electoral prospects for the next election.
I'm afraid not.
That you don't care what happens to the Valley. You're putting the BJP before the country, and that's what I'm accusing you of.
I am putting the country before, and that is why I am deeply concerned about 60 years of policy where this separate status concept of Kashmir has led to a movement towards separatism. I think the history will make a cruel judgment one day. Was the Nehruvian vision right on Kashmir? Was Dr. Mukherjee's vision right? And I'm sure both of us will await that judgment.
I'm glad you brought up history. Today, many people in India believe that India could be at the brink of losing the Valley forever. If that were to happen, history will judge that the BJP was the person that gave the Valley the first push into the arms of Islamabad.
Well, the history will then say this will not happen. This will not happen because I am one of those who firmly believe Azadi is not even a distant dream for those separatists. It's an impossibility. India will not and should not even compromise with an inch of its territory.
The tragedy is that the BJP may make a distant dream of reality.
I am therefore not going to get into the blame game, though I firmly believe the Congress even today must correct 60 years of error into which it has fallen.
All right, Mr. Jaitley, I'll let you have the last word. A pleasure talking to you on Devil's Advocate.